Okay. Every time I don't know how to transition. Okay, no, let's get started now. Oh no. Ah. I. Oh no. Uh, Sorry for having to delay this. Hi, Moosey Pona. Does humanity deserve the privilege of the stars? Well, that's kind of what I'll explore today. We'll get started in a bit, but I guess just how's everyone been? I apologize for having to delay the stream twice. Just I've had a lot to do. Oh my gosh. I don't like being tired. I was tired last stream as well, and it was very. It was. Hi, Consta. All right. Yeah, we'll get started. In a sec. I want to give some more people time to join. But if not, if it's just you two, and you're gonna learn a lot. Oh boy. This will definitely go well. I have faith in myself. Alright. Okay. Yeah, I guess how's everyone been? I've asked that like a few times. Oh yeah, I don't know. I genuinely don't remember if I already mentioned this, but I'm experimenting with having like sound, like music playing in the background of the stream. Let me know if it's too loud or too quiet, because I don't know. I can only do so much from my end. Well, alright, it looks like it's just going to be you two, so I guess let's get started. God. Presenting never gets easy. I don't know. Everyone gets presenting anxiety. It's not anything different. This is like alright, let me stop stalling and let's get started. Of course, I'm gonna open this up with the classic quote you often see in like media and like books surrounding space colonization from Konstantin Stylovsky. Earth is the cradle of humanity. Earth is the cradle of humanity, but one doesn't live in the cradle forever. This you'd see this in pretty much any like books or media regarding space colonization and advocacy for space colonization, but we're gonna add a bit more nuance throughout stream. Watching stream from the past, either way, doing good. Had a March 8th celebration. Yes, International Women's Day. And also the day after March 7th's birthday. I spend too much time playing gacha games. When that's a lot. Don't worry. I prioritize well. I am. What am I doing right now? Right. I'm presenting. All right. So here's an overview of what's going to be discussed. I'm just gonna give like just a brief overview of like current situation and such. Then we're also gonna examine, is this even a good idea? Cause is it? I don't know. Then we're gonna go over the various challenges that women need to overcome to expand outward. We're gonna look at where in the solar system we can settle. We're gonna look at like base design and like various technologies. And lastly, we're gonna look at the spacefaring society in the long term, as well as going beyond. All right. Give an overview. It's for like those who advocate like space colonization. It's seen as a natural extension of space exploration because engaging in long-term settlement allows for lots of potential science and maybe even money and resources. And like especially recently, it's picked up a lot of political and scientific momentum, but mainly political momentum, with like the advent of a second space race brewing between like, of course, we have the U.S. and China, but then also various private companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and such. And is this second space race good? I don't know if was the first space race good. And if it was good, how can we be sure it's going to be the same? You know, people are going to be buying moon rocks on Amazon in 50. I hope not. I don't want the moon. Okay, this is just personal, but I don't want the moon to become commodified. But, yeah. Is space colonization a good idea? It depends on who you ask, and so I'm gonna cover 3 main arguments for space colonization, each with their own variations, and then at the end of the stream, I'm going to go back and reevaluate them after we cover everything else. So the first argument is that it is a necessity for survival. This takes 2 general forms. One, that we need to colonize space now in order to save us from climate change, overpopulation, or nuclear war. And the second form is the idea of a cathedral of survival, which basically says that in the long term, settling space will help us survive. So we should begin laying the groundwork now. The issue with the first one is that space sucks. It's not going to be livable anytime soon. And in order to, as I'll talk through a stream, lots of research needs to get done and conducted in order to be able to know how to build settlements off-world. And also, without a good legal framework, it could cause conflict there could be conflict in space, which I think kind of undermines the idea of like space colonization being used to increase humanity's odds of survival. Of course, we have the cathedral of survival, the like second more long-term form, stating that like in order for space to become a viable second home for humanity, we need a huge self-sufficient colony, and general figures puts like the bare minimum of like genetic like diversibility and survivability around 10,000 to 30,000 people, and yeah, like just it's not going to save us from any immediate disasters, but in the long run it would help, so we should lay the framework now and not rush it. The second argument is that colonizing space would bring prosperity. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my speaker notes right now. A lot of this argument derives from the fact that there seems to be a lot of potential resources in asteroids and in the asteroid belts, and that if we can manage to mine them, it will provide a huge boost to economy on Earth. But there are a lot of issues I take for that. Firstly, like the economics of it is kind of flawed. The asteroid belt is scattered. We don't really know how much resources are actually in there. And there's also issues of oh god. There's issues of the Oh my god, I'm blank. I have my notes here. You doing it? Oh, thanks for believing in me. I don't believe in myself as nearly as much as I should. Oh yeah, no, where was it? Yeah, no, it. We don't really know how many resources are here, and as of right now, we don't really know how economically viable it would be, and also just the fact that if a sudden increase in supply would lower the price, so like the actual value that we purport is being overstated. Like it might not be trillions of dollars just because as we bring more in, the supply goes up and so price goes down. And even if like that we do manage to harvest space resources at an economically viable scale, and it does bring in a lot of wealth and money. Question is, for whom is this prosperity for? How is distribution decided? And as we'll learn a bit later, that's kind of an open-ended, unanswered question. The third argument is that just simply because we can. Like, there's like the idea of the frontier spirit and the call to adventure. This was kind of like what Carl Sagan said, that humans have a natural urge to explore, and that the same thing extends to space, and that naturally humanity will want to settle space. This, for some, it does appeal on an instinctive level of like, yeah, we're adventurers, like why don't we go explore and settle space? But it's an idealistic assertion without any real actual backing, and it doesn't really work as a justification, just saying like, oh, it's natural human urge. Like even if that's true, okay, cool, but like, why else? Like there's, and the second is like what I've seen dubbed as the hot tub argument. Basically just, it's a personal choice. We should not, if people want to gather together and go out into space and settle, who are we to stop them? But the question, of course, becomes, is it actually something that can just be made by one person or a group of people, or is it a decision that affects all of us, that affects our society? Alright, next, let's go over the challenges. There are a lot of them, and as you'll see, like, as I talk about them, a lot of it stems from just the fact that we don't really have good data. So, the first one is challenges of physiology, of like, how does living in space affect our body? First off, space is full of radiation. Everything wants to kill you, and it most likely causes an increase in cancer. And also, like, because like we have solar radiation, like from the sun, and the high energy particles, and there's also the background radiation of the universe, and also radiation can sometimes impact your shielding, and that causes more radiation, which isn't good. There's also the effects of microgravity and like how human bodies adapt in low G. Like we do have some like data from like our habitation on the International Space Station and such, and we do know that it causes bone and muscle decay, and that's why like astronauts on the ISS and other space stations like Tiangong have to engage in rigorous, consistent exercise in order to prevent muscle and bone decay. And also, microgravity affects the blood flow, because the fluids and the flow through our body it's constantly under pressure from Earth's gravity, so it kind of messes stuff up when it's put in when you put in microgravity, and it can affect your vision as well. And like I mentioned, it's just we don't really have a lot of long-term data, and we also don't have any real data on like if like all this about microgravity and such applies to partial gravity like on the moon or Mars, because there's only been like 12 humans that ever reached Mars, and they were only there for a month. Wouldn't the easiest way to travel be to find the moon and build ships there, since it has weaker gravity, also spinning ring stations? We're gonna talk about that a bit later when I go over where to settle. So just wait. I don't want to answer the question now because it's going to be answered later in stream. Alright, next are the challenges with psychology. Space flights are long and cramped, and habitats are likely to be isolated from humanity, and also just tightly enclosed spaces. Now, it's not going to be like The Shining, but in space, like madness. One dude goes crazy and tries to kill everyone else, and there's just no real observed cases of that happening on space missions, or even in like other really isolated settlements, like down in Antarctica. But what's more realistic is that space colonies would need the same mental health care services that we have on Earth, or should have on Earth more realistically. And the mental health issues can't be left unchecked in the same way that we can't really have it left unchecked here on Earth either, except it could potentially be far more impactful if someone has a mental break on the moon or Mars than just here on Earth. But again, data is kind of unreliable when it comes to evaluating the long-term astronaut psychology, because they're liars, and it's just they aren't really going to be honest about like their real feelings and such. Alright, so next issue is of having children. That's like the goal of like space settlement, right? To be able to like have children in space, and then they have children. Telling the truth is self-sabotage. Yeah, exactly, because if astronauts were to be more honest about like psychological issues they might have experienced on the mission, then it could mean they are slated for removal and like can't fly anymore, and it would effectively end their careers. No, going back to this, that's often like the talked about goal, but no one ever really looks at the science behind it. How does one have children in space? How does space and like microgravity, partial gravity affect childbirth and like the process, and then both the process and like early development, and then also once they're born and like that development stage, and can its effects be mitigated? And there's only really been a few studies conducted on this with animals, and they aren't really enough to tell us anything. And like obviously we haven't tested it with like humans, both because of funding, but also would such studies be ethical? Something can't really seem exactly. That's kind of the issue, because we can't. It's very difficult to collect data, especially with ethical concerns of like using live humans as subjects and like bring them into the world, but their purpose is just to see if they survive or not. That's it's kind of crossing an ethical boundary, but which makes it more difficult to get data. And like I mentioned earlier, the few animal tests that have been conducted on this aren't really enough to tell us much of anything. Right. And lastly, we have issues with the law. Sorry. I made a dedicated video on this. It's 20 minutes long, but let me just very much quickly go over like speedrun it. Our current legal framework for space colonization and space law is woefully inadequate. The regulations are steeped in the Cold War, with the Outer Space Treaty, the main governing document for activities in space, have been signed all the way back in 1967, and everything within it is ambiguous. It doesn't cover like all the modern like legal issues that would come up with space, like space sovereignty or space mining or anything like that. And as such, one of the most important things that we would need to be able to properly settle space would be a new legal framework, one that would ideally allow for stability and peace while still allowing science to be conducted and development of space economies to happen. All right, now let's go over various potential second homes, areas we can settle. Let's look at the moon. Pros: it's very close to Earth. It's just a 6-day round trip, and it's the gateway to the solar system because it has lower gravity, which allows and no atmosphere. Low gravity and no atmosphere. That allows for launches to be easier, and we could get to places farther, because a lot of the Delta V, the fuel that we use to get into space in the first place, is just to leave Earth. And so if we can eliminate that, we could allow for larger ships and be able to carry more stuff. And or we could install mass railguns on the moon that could shoot matter in directions, just like it'd be straight off the surface, and we wouldn't need to worry about that. Imagine Mr. Beast video where he forces the guy to stay in a lunar habitat for 100 days with no access to... Oh god, that sounds awful. I don't... Ugh. But, cons. The moon has no resources in of itself. It is very... it's very resource poor, and it's just... It's just a big rock. It has no real value. No rare minerals that would be worth trying to get on the moon that we couldn't just get on Earth. And no atmosphere, so no pressure, and also the soil is deadly. It is razor sharp, and it coats your suits, and if you try and rub it off, you can't get off. It just spreads it, and that is not something you really want. And there's also huge temperature variance and limited good base sites, because the moon is tidally locked between the Earth. It's tidally locked to the Earth, so it has 2 weeks where it's lit up and 2 weeks where it's in darkness. And so it leads to judges being very few actual good places. I wish I could zoom in on this image, but places like Shackleton Crater and such, they have both what's known as peaks of eternal light, where it's almost entirely sunlight, then also, and you could set up solar panels and such, and also craters of eternal darkness, where no matter what, the sun can't reach it. And so that allows for, it could potentially allow for there to be water, and all the good base sites are at the poles. And if there was a scramble for lunar territory, that's kind of where it'd be, because those are the only real good spots, because of both easy access to water and near perpetual light. Oh, and another issue is going back to resource poor. Moon has no carbon, which that's necessary for all life here on Earth. All right. Next, Mars. Mars is the often talked about candidate for space colonization. It's it's where we're gonna settle. It's where Elon Musk promised to have humans on Mars by 2020. Let's go over the pros. There's a lot of good locations, Like there's no one. It's not like the moon where there's a limited amount of spots. There are a lot of places. You could go up near the poles where there's a lot more easier access to frozen water. Or you could stay near the equator where the temperature is relatively more moderate compared to compared to other places. And it also has a lot of access to like important elements like carbon. Like carbon, as we'll go over, is like it's very important for life support because of the many uses it has, and also the fact that all life on Earth here is carbon based, and we don't really know if there are rare metals, like rare and valuable metals on Mars. But if there are, that could also be good. But let's go over the cons. For one, the soil is toxic and the atmosphere is thin. If any of y'all watched The Martian, you know he grew potatoes with Martian soil, but that wouldn't be possible unless he had a really good soil cleaner, because the soil was discovered shortly after the release of the movie to be filled with deadly perchlorates. And like you can't really grow stuff in that. There's also the fact that Mars is a lot further away from Earth. The optimal launch window would be around every 2 years. And there's also a 6-month travel time. So if something happens, like if something happened on the moon, you could theoretically organize a rescue mission. But if something bad happened on Mars, you're kind of on your own. Right. So yeah, the moon and Mars are kind of the best. They suck, but that's why. But that's okay because everywhere else is just so much worse, as we'll look at in a bit. So like 2 bases are good. Well, I mean, the issue is that no colony is going to be self-sustaining for a long time, just because of the amount of people that would need to go into it for labor and for like genetic self-sustainability. But alright, let's look at a potential other option: rotating space stations. There are some benefits to it. With like large with large rotating rings, we could avoid the effects of partial gravity if that ends up being a serious detriment to our development. And they could also serve as trade hubs and could be positioned anywhere within the solar system. And theoretically, enough of them it allows for infinite ? Space. But the issues is that it's just extremely difficult to construct. Like it'd be a huge engineering challenge to basically just start over and like build a system, like a rotating engineering system like this from the ground up, because the ring has to be really large, because if it's too small, you'd have different gravities at your feet and at your head, which is incredibly disorienting. And also just the lack of real infrastructure. Like you'd have to establish infrastructure already in space, and at that point, why not just go ahead and settle the moon of Mars? You wouldn't be able to live on the surface of Mars because of the radiation from the sun. Yeah, that's why radiation shielding and like good base design is important. We can make the first colonies and then take people there, surviving Mars style. I mean, it depends, because like a small colony can't really work. Like it can't be like self-sustaining. It'd be very much more like an outpost, and like the because colonies, I mentioned earlier, like the genetic like minimum for self-reproduction, but also there's just like you need a certain number of people for sorry. you'd be able to. You need not only technology to be able to grow food, produce like life support and all that, but that's like we'll talk up more on this later. But yeah. There's also Venus. I mean, it has a similar gravity to Earth, and it's on average closer to Mars. That sounds this sounds pretty good, but there's just one small issue. It is the embodiment of hell. Literally, it's planet is classic case of the runaway greenhouse effect. Pressure on the surface, you'd be crushed to death. Temperature on the surface, you'd be cooked to death along with your pizza that you put on the windowsill. It was like you could cook a pizza in a few seconds by just leaving it out on Venus. That wouldn't actually happen though, because like I said, you'd be crushed to death before that happened. Though there is a thin there is a very thin oh my god. I'm sorry. Oh god, this is I don't know, I'm having fun. Like, hi Fergus. Venus is the goddess of beauty. Top 10 anime betrayals. Yeah, Venus is the goddess of beauty, but the planet is hell, and the only habitable layer, you could build like, I don't know, cloud cities in there, or like I don't know. That's kind of crazy. Yeah, if you want to live your life dangling above and below hell, of just either you go too far up, you freeze or freeze to death, or just, well, you wouldn't really freeze, but no, like your blood would boil, or you go too far down and then it just you die from the pressure and temperature. Floating city, staple of sci-fi. Yeah, staple of sci-fi, not really that realistic in reality. Alright. There's also the asteroid belt. Well, the issue is that most asteroids are not colonizable. They're just kind of big, they're just not big, they're just bits of dust and like little piles of crumbly rock. And the resources are scattered very thinly across the huge belt, but all the mass in it is really only just like, it's around the size of the moon if you all put it together. Like, only the big asteroids have potential as like maybe mining outposts or such, and like I said, they'd just be outposts. They couldn't really properly become proper settlements without settlements around the moon or Mars, and so it's not the first place you'd want to go. And also, the effectiveness of solar panels drops because of the inverse square law. Basically, the distance scale, it dropped the effectiveness of like solar radiation received drops exponentially. So, God, how do I put this in? It's just, hold on. No, I'm going to find a graph because I can't properly word this. I'm sorry. Give me a minute. Exponentially, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. I can't really. Right here, I think I can use this. Alright, this better describes what I'm saying. So as distance increases, the effectiveness, like the amount of energy received, is like cut. So here at R1, area 1, and like and like R2 area 4, like the amount of energy stays the same, and then like it increases like that. I couldn't find a graph, but it's fine. But that the same thing applies to solar energy and the effectiveness of solar panels. The further you go out, the less and less useful they are as a means to to power bases and to collect energy. So you need some other form of energy generation, like RTGs, or if we manage to crack the secrets of fusion, that could work. Basically, just nuclear power. What? Just nuclear power. Right, technologies for colonization, and this is also just like general base design. So like we have habitat construction. This is kind of important because it keeps us from not dying immediately. I don't know about you, but I like not immediately dying. Like, it'd give us good radiation. Like, some of the requirements would be you need good radiation shielding and also pressurized systems. And, well, lava tubing might be the best bet. On the moon and Mars, for example, when billions of years ago, like, lava had flown through certain areas, and what happened was the outer shell cooled while the rest of the lava flowed through. So what you're left with is a huge open cave that can be really deep underground, and rock is a really good radiation insulator. It gives us good radiation shielding, and it can also have a lot of space. We should send some robots to some lava. Yeah, honestly, we should, like, because I mentioned earlier that a lot of the issues we have is just lack of exploration and like data, and like we just don't, there's so much data we do not have regarding like space settlement, and like we can't rush into this just because there's a lot of research we need to conduct first. But if you don't want to live in a bunch of lava tubes, alternatives could be you could use like regolith, like rocks and dust, to cover up like an inflated habitat, and then that would allow you to, like I said, rock is a good radiation shielder, so you'd use that. Like, it'd be part of in-situ resource utilization. You use hydrothermal vents on planets and moons that have those. Maybe you could, I don't see why you couldn't use like geothermal power or hydrothermal power. If it's available. The issue is like it's only available in certain places. Like it's not even really it's only available on like moons of the outer planets. Like Mars is geologically dead. Its core has long since cooled down. That's why it doesn't have a magnetosphere, and that's why all the volcanoes like Olympus Mons and such don't erupt, because the planet is, like I said, geologically dead. There's also next up, we gotta make oxygen and water, both things humans really like. This can actually be done on Mars. There's been experimental technologies like the MOXIE, which was tested on the Perseverance rover, and the WAVAR, which allows for you to collect water vapor from like the atmosphere. The MOXIE converts carbon dioxide to oxygen. And there's also what's known as the Sabatier process. You can take resources abundant on Mars, carbon dioxide, and you throw in hydrogen, which actually I don't know where you get the hydrogen. And out of it you get CH4 and H2O. This is a really good rocket fuel, and this is what we like to drink, and what plants like to drink. Why did Mars cool down so quickly? Well, I'm actually not too sure, but like what I do know is that Mars used to have like conditions for potential life, but I think what the main thing is like Mars did not have any active plate tectonics, so it did not have like what we have on Earth with the recycling of rocks and such. Mars is small, small things go faster. Yeah, that as well. Mars is smaller than Earth, and so its core generally cooled off quicker. Main thing with oxygen and was that you need a closed loop system, closed loop pressurized system with constant recycling and scrubbing. This is especially important on a space station like the ISS. On colonies on other planets, it might be a little bit less vital, but I think it'd still be a high priority to be reusing your resources. All right, next, there's space farming and ecology. Well, we do know plants have been able to successfully be grown in space on the ISS. I don't know if it's been like if the Tiangong space station of China has done similar experiments. But regardless, it was more a matter of soil quality. Plants more than like anything else need good soil. Martian soil, like I mentioned, is toxic. Lunar soil is toxic. Martian soil, you'd have to really clean it out and scrub it of. You need to scrub it of the perchlorates and other bad things in there, and then you'd be able to use it. But what if that's not possible? In that case, you'd have to utilize hydroponic or aeroponic farming. This is like an example of aeroponically grown food. I wish I chose a better image because I think there was some like diagrams of how it worked. But like basically, like it's like a synthesization of like technology and then farming, and it allows for. I really should. I wish I knew how this. Hold on, let me. I don't want to spread misinformation, so let me. With how stuff is going, we should sail the sun. Seems to be the safest place. I mean, if you go at night, I'm sure it's fine, right? Thanks. All right. Okay, so hydroponics does not use soil. And what's aeroponics? Mist-based. Oh, interesting. Yeah, no, that's basically what we'd have to do if we couldn't manage to, like, properly clean the Martian soil. Close enough, could go back at night and come back in the... I know it's a joke, but that kind of hurts my soul. That's not how the sun works. The sun is a glowing ball of plasma. Also, or alternatively, maybe cricket ranching, like other farm animals, like especially bigger ones, like cows, pigs, sheep. No, that's not gonna work out. They're just it's not efficient to spend the resources to cultivate them. But crickets, they are small, high in protein, and they can be cared for easily. All you have to do is manage to convince people to eat crickets. And that, again, like, the ecological system would need to be a closed loop, which in this case refers to both input and output. Input being the food, and output being the poop. And you'd have to utilize that, and also, just in general, like, again, I'm going to harp on this point a lot throughout stream, but just like, we have no real data on experiments in closed loop ecology. Like, there's been experiments like Biosphere 2, but it just hasn't been replicated enough to be able to have enough data to really work with. Who would they eat those cute little guys? The crickets? Well, I don't know, the World Economic Foundation, like, encourages cricket eating. because of all the aforementioned benefits. And I know, like, my local museum, I think at least at some point, I don't know if it still does, but they had like vending machines where you could get like crickets and scorpions in like a little candy. And it's like, that was kind of crazy. Yeah, like I said, like there's just been no studies into developing proper closed loop ecological systems, and we can't. This is like the point I'm like gonna be hopping in. I believe in like we should settle space, but I think we're being too rash about it. We need to. There's so much we need to learn first before we're able to effectively do it without people dying. All right. Now, let's look at the long-term future. Building a society. As outposts expand into better colonies and proper cities, there's going to be the question of provision of services, and it'd kind of be like a company town, because a lot of the provider, it's likely a lot of services are only going to have one real provider because of the steep cost that would come from bringing over new other companies, other firms arriving and trying to set up business there. And so like that's, and like unlike regular company towns, like it'd be more than just like controlling where you work and like services like food distribution or like bars and such, but the very air you breathe, the water you drink and such would have to be provided by them. And like the question is, would the people living in the colony have any real bargaining power? And also the question of the macro economy. What would the economic base of a space economy be? Who owns what? And like what are the main like imports and exports and such? Probably somewhat similar to Soviet mono industry cities. Yeah, maybe like mining towns, or the like I think there was like they had also developed like research towns designed exclusively for like conducting science. It would be kind of similar to that, especially if it's like depending on the law. And that kind of brings me to the question of like the macro economy, like who owns what. Like it would depend on international law, because under current international law, space is a commons to be treated as a framework and owned by all of humanity to be shared. But question like with private companies trying to expand into space, as well as national governments, like question of course then goes back to who exactly will own what and who will provide for what. It'd likely be a single provider, but who would that be? And would the people who actually live in the town and such have good bargaining power and have control? These are like, it's questions. I talked a lot about this in my space law video, so I checked that out, but definitely not another attempt at self-promotion. But no, that's just kind of like a big issue. Another one is the long-term relationship between Earth and its colonies. Like, ideally, I at least I would think trying to avoid conflict in space is ideal. But inherently, there's going to be a level of power imbalance and a potential for unequal exchange, because colonies are going to be dependent on advanced life support technology from Earth, and they would export raw resources back. And yeah, and it's just like there's a very big imbalance there, and it could lead to a lot of issues if it's not handled and mitigated properly. Have I read A City on Mars? Yes, I have actually. I got it. That's actually where a lot of inspiration and like research for this comes from. This stream is kind of like verbalizing this into a presentation done by an incredibly scuffed live streamer. But if you're more into reading, go read it. Go read it. But yeah, no, this is something I actually don't know if it was brought up in detail, but like the idea of unequal exchange of like the power imbalance between Earth and its colonies. Because the quote, I guess, like alright, so I guess I do have to explain unequal exchange. It's the state where trade is imbalanced, not in the sense of like imports more than exports, but like the value of goods traded is fundamentally unequal, and it's something you see but with former imperial countries and their former colonies. Even if officially colonialism has ended, there's still the relationship of neocolonialism, and I guess to quote Michael Parenti, these countries are not underdeveloped, they are overexploited. That's the issue with unequal exchange and relations on Earth, and obviously it's not going to apply directly to like between Earth and its colonies in space, but it's still something to look out for. And I think it can be, this power imbalance that could be mitigated with laws and treaties and just ensuring that like the resources and people that we send out into space are given an equal voice and are on the same footing with dealings with the home planet. Star Wars, but it's corporations, not old people with magic. I think there's a sci-fi series kind of like that. It was like, I haven't really checked it out, but it's like the Corporation Wars. I've heard of it. Alright. We're near the end, and it's been an hour. This has been my longest lecture yet. And I've mostly just been talking and answering a few questions, but right. This section, by the way, is going to be about further settlement beyond what we've talked about. We can talk very briefly about that. Phantom Menace starts with trade disputes about tariffs and trade. Yeah, okay, honestly, I like the prequels because of the politics. Like, it's very interesting, like the way various factions interact. As like, honestly, all of Star Wars has been very political. Like the original trilogy was based on, it was kind of like, it was based on the Vietnam War, and it was kind of just like meant to be George Lucas's criticism of American involvement and actions. Going on. For the question of settling the outer solar system, it's theoretically possible if you use like direct fusion drive technology, which is an experimental idea of propulsion that would directly use fusion reactions to propel a rocket. A similar form of this would be like antimatter rockets, using matter-antimatter annihilation, and the fact that when matter interacts with antimatter, it creates pure energy, using that to propel your ships. However, a lot of the issues I talked about with throughout the live stream, with like psychological, physiological, base designs, power generation, it's all going to be magnified by going further out. Like it's pretty much impossible to use solar panels past Mars, and also just the general isolation from humanity. And also, well, I guess lastly, settling other stars. As much as this is the dream of myself and many others, and also like the idea of sci-fi, it is an unfortunate pipe dream. Light speed travel, faster than light travel, that is solely within the realm of science fiction, at least from what we know. From under current laws of physics, faster than light travel is impossible, even if, like, theoretically we could find wormholes, but there's no real direct evidence of them existing. And even if we somehow manage to reach 10% of the speed of light, the nearest star to us, well, let me find it. Here we go. Proxima Centauri, the Alpha Centauri system, it'd be 40 years away. And, like, even that figure's a stretch. We don't... The fastest... Like, if we went at the speed of Voyager, or, like, of the Parker Solar Probe, it would take thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. And, like, and that's just for the near star. Like... yeah. And, like, you could reach other places who, like, generation ships, cryogenics. But, like, there's the issues of long-term sustainment. You need for generation ships, you not only be able to need to build a system that could fully function throughout the long distance, but also build a society that could operate harmoniously throughout the void of space. Because connected to that is also, like, the question of, like, what of the people in the middle, those who live and die and spend their entire life in the void of space, never reach, knowing their whole life is just an intermediary for one generation to eventually reach another star that might, quote unquote, might be habitable. And it's just like what's the ethics behind that? Is that something right? And it's, yeah, like I said, it's ultimately a gamble. Like, you travel all this distance only, and the star might not even be habitable. And that's why, like, cryogenics, like just freeze everyone if that's possible. But stars move. Sometimes stars will pass more closer. We see 710 will pass a distance of 0.17 light years from the sun. The only problem is that will happen 1.3 million years from now. Yeah, this is a bit of a problem, but I mean, if humanity can survive 1.3 million years and make it there, then maybe. All right. Now, before I end, let's go back to the arguments made in favor of space colonization and reevaluate them. So, it's necessary for survival. Obviously, we already established the flaws with, like, we need to colonize space now, and because to save us from climate change or whatnot. But with the cathedral of survival idea and the, like, we lay the framework now because eventually space colonization will help us in the long run. Well, it depends, and with current trends, maybe it's not, because, like I mentioned, current space law is very ambiguous, and it's just, without a proper framework, there could be conflict there, and, like, all it could do is increase instability within human society and prevent really proper, like, it all it does is decrease stability, and just cause more chaos and make it less safe for humanity. And, like, reminds me of another quote of the dinosaurs went extinct because they didn't have a space program. Like, maybe, but also the dinosaurs lived for hundreds of millions of years. I think they had a pretty good run. Maybe the dinosaurs didn't go extinct for so long precisely because they didn't have a space program, because they didn't risk so much. would bring prosperity. Again, like we elaborated on prosperity for who, for whom. The laws, there's no real laws established. It all goes back to the law, but no, it all goes back to like how is distribution of resources decided. Not just colonization space wherever possible. However, yeah, that's my thing. I don't like the idea that like something should be done like just because it could be profitable. Like there's so much science that can be conducted through settlement, like you mentioned. Like, well, of course we shouldn't do it because it will be profitable in the short term. It won't, or that would be profitable in the long term, which it isn't. I don't think like in a lot of cases science is not that profitable, because if science is not can't bring an immediate direct improvement in short-term profits, it probably won't get invested in. But it doesn't mean it shouldn't be pursued. That's kind of like what I believe in like space colonization. Like I think the issue is we need to be patient. Honestly, I don't, as much as I would love to live like and see like people land on Mars and start colonizing the solar system, I don't think that in our current like situation it is a good idea because of all the issues I mentioned earlier. There's just so much we don't know. There's a lot of data we don't have, and I keep harping on this point, but it is just the law about it is really bad, and under current framework it could very much lead to a space scramble, space conflict, and that is just not something that we want, because conflict is not, well, I think extinction level conflict is not good for science. You want the moon rocks names? No, come on, don't. We can. Yeah. All right, and also, because we can. Going back to like the idea of hot tub argument, is it a personal choice? Well, again, it's like, is it really though? I don't think it is, because it is like space colonization is something that can affect all of humanity and likely would, and we have to consider like the impacts it has. It can't really just be treated as like a personal purchase. I think that I think I've talked a lot about this. If you want recommended reading, someone mentioned earlier City on Mars. That is very good book. There's also Soonish, which I haven't read. It's made by the same people that explores the technology side of like near future technologies. But all right, I'll stick around a bit for the once this presentation's done. If any of y'all want to ask further questions, but other than that, I'm gonna end it with a quote attributed to Yuri Gagarin. "Nothing will stop us. The road to the stars is steep and dangerous, but we are not afraid." I think that's kind of a good note. And just like, there'll be challenges, it'll be fraught, and in the short term, it's not a good idea. In the medium term, in long term, it all depends. But human society might be able to persevere. We'll see. Alright. Was the presentation I could have probably made it a bit bigger now that I'm realizing it. So I wouldn't have that large of a gray on black. Well, it's too late now. I've already done the whole presentation. Well, if no one has any other further questions for the professor, I'm your professor now. I'm going to... So that asteroid will not hit the... Will it not? I remember reading about that. There's like it had like a small percentage chance to hit the moon. um Oh dang! Oh yeah, no, it won't hit the moon. Is Europa a good choice? That was answered here. Settling the outer solar. Like it's a lot of the issues with settling like closer to us are just magnified, and like Europa's very isolated, and there is also the question of like there could be life under the surface. We'll find out in a few years, or at least we'll find out more data with the Europa Clipper. Europa has radiation. Yeah, I think so, because I know Jupiter and like all the Jovian planets have really high radiation bands, and also yeah, biosafety, like, and also ethics of like contaminating a system that potentially could have life on it. So yeah, no, but yeah, won't hit the moon. Well, I don't know. I thought it'd be kind of cool if it did. It could lead to a nice visual. Yeah. Chance Bob Chalmers documentary. I hope not. Jeez. I hope it's just like little alien fish under Europa. Europa's cool. All the moons are so cool. Mars is overhyped, honestly. Like obviously, like it sucks, but even though it's better than everywhere else, but it still sucks, and like no, it's overhyped in terms of like overall coolness factor. All the moons are cool. All the outer planet moons are cool. Mars just has two potato moons. Europa, Enceladus, Titan, Pluto, and Charon. Pluto's so cool. I love Pluto. It has a heart on its surface, and sure, that heart might be filled with like ammonia, or I actually don't remember, but it's like the heart might be filled with poison, but it's still adorable, is it not? I don't know what I'm talking about at this point. Even Earth on the day when the asteroids killed dinosaurs is still more habitable life. Yeah, and that's like I mentioned earlier, that the idea of we need to settle space now is a bad idea, because like even if like in the worst case, the absolute worst case of like climate disaster or like nuclear war, at least you still have a breathable atmosphere, and you won't freeze or to death, or your blood won't boil to death. Like you can't do that much. You step outside on Mars or the moon without a pressure suit or without oxygen, you're dead. And at least you still. That's why I don't think there's any pressing need to push towards space colonization. It is a long-term, like multi-generational, perhaps centuries-long endeavor. It's not something we need to rush or should rush, like I mentioned. Let's just focus on getting our science, and then when we learn more, and then we could go big, establish a huge colony and huge colonies, and then that would allow us, and hopefully we set up and plan everything in advance with like legal framework, and we know all the technologies behind it. Because the space race, we got to the moon too early, prematurely. Yeah, honest. yeah, like the space race was a very interesting time. Yeah, people got to the moon without any plan of what to do after. Because yeah, the space race was kind of just like it was a big. I kind of talked about this in the live stream I did, talking about the Soviet space program, but it was kind of just like it was a big ideological competition, and like both sides would just kind of push the goalposts. Like especially America, they like pushed the goalposts until they won, quote unquote. But I think I think part of the issue is that, like, yeah, you like you mentioned, we got to the moon without any plan of what to do after, and like people just lost interests. The general public lost interest, and like and then after that, we shifted our science towards low Earth orbit, establishing the space station, such, which I think was a good move. I really don't think if we don't even know how to properly establish space colonies now, we definitely did not know in the 70s and 80s. Ugh. All right, I think we are good to go ahead and wrap up. I'm kind of tired, and I do have work I need to get done. So, I hope you all enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. I really hope I managed to teach you something. But other than that, I'm not good at beginnings or endings. You're welcome for the stream. All right. Bye, everyone.